e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle kingside, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castle kingside, h3, bishop b7, d4, rook e8, knight d2, bishop f8, a3, h6, bishop c2, knight b8, b3, knight d7, bishop b2, rook b8, a4, c5, d5, bishop c8, a takes b5, a takes b5, bishop d3, knight h5, bishop f1, knight f6, rook a7, knight f4, queen a1, knight g6, queen a5, queen takes a5, rook takes a5, bishop d7, rook a1, rook b7, knight e1, rook b8, knight c2, knight e8, rook a8, rook takes a8, rook takes a8, knight c7, rook a5, bishop e7, c4, bishop g5, knight e3, bishop takes e3, f takes e3, b4, bishop d3, king f8, king h2, king e7, knight f3, rook b8, rook a7, king d8, bishop c1, rook a8, rook takes a8 check, knight takes a8, bishop d2, knight c7, bishop e1, knight e8, knight d2, knight f6, bishop c2, knight f8, bishop d3, king e7, bishop c2, knight h7, knight f1, king f8, bishop f2, g6, bishop e1, king g7, bishop f2, h5, bishop e1, knight g8, bishop f2, knight h6, knight d2, g5, g3, knight f6, king g2, knight g8, bishop d3, knight e7, bishop e2, knight g6, bishop d1, king h6, bishop e2, knight e7, bishop d1, king g6, bishop e2, knight g8, Bishop D1. Knight H6. Bishop E2. Knight G8. Bishop D1. Knight E7. Bishop E2. Knight C8. Bishop D1. Knight B6. Bishop E1. Knight G8. Bishop F2. Knight H6. Bishop E1. F6. Bishop F2. Knight F7. G4. H takes G4. H takes G4. Knight D8. Knight F1. Knight B7. Knight G3. Knight A5. Knight F5. Knight B7. King F1. King F7. King E2. Bishop C8. King D3. King E8. Knight G3. Knight A5. Knight F1. King D8. Knight D2. King C7. King C2. Bishop D7. Bishop E2. Knight C8. Knight F1. Knight E7. Knight G3. Knight G8. Knight F5. Bishop takes F5. E takes F5. E4. Bishop G3. Knight H6. Bishop D1. King D7. Bishop E2. King E7. Bishop D1. Knight B7. King D2. Knight D8. King E1. Knight F7. King F2. Knight E5. Bishop takes E5. F takes E5. Bishop E2. Knight G8. King E1. Knight F6. King D2. King F8. King E1. King E7. King D2. King F8. King E1. King E7. King D2.